A baby cannot be heard crying from their mother's womb.
A baby cannot be heard crying from their mother's womb.
Yes. Implicit in that proverb is babies cry and they may be crying. But the little detail here is the issue of that distress call being heard.
It doesn't mean that the babies don't cry in their mother's womb.
No, it doesn't mean that at all.
Okay.
You learn something new every day.
Right. Indeed, you do. This conversation is live streaming on SpiceFM KE, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and our website, www.spicefm.co.ke. You can also catch us on SpiceFM around the country. And now for the next 1 hour, we are live on KTN Home. Our guest for this hour is the MP for Mvita constituency, the chairman of the National Assembly's Public Investments Committee, Abdulswamad Shariff Nasir.
Thank you very much for having me.
Welcome to the hot seat.
Asante.
Good to have you here. Your sense of fashion is quite good. You're giving CT some good.
In fact, one could say that your sense of fashion is quite converse.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. No, actually, I've been planning to come over for a while, and then I think today we're currently on recess, and my next meeting is at around 12 o'clock. So I opted, might not be very, very ideal to start suiting up from first thing in the morning. But usually just around this time is when I've just finished training. So I decided to reverse roles. I'll be here, and then later on probably just go and do a bit of training, then head to serve the people.
That's a very good thing. So you're on recess, but you're still meeting.
Yes, we are still meeting. Recess usually is for plenary sittings, the chamber sittings, but committees are allowed to sit, and we have opted because we had quite a bit of things that we need to finalize on. That we're planning to meet, and then we're going to take a little break, and then we'll meet again. So, yeah. Kenya is very small. I mean, there's some parts of this country where when you go for recess, then it is like continuous for such a long period of time. But where but majority, can be able to traverse. And if we can be able to take a break of a week, and then a week back, and then a week again, should be good.
Works
enough.
for you. You have a full in-tray as a Public Investments Committee. For very many people who may not be aware, what is the scope of your committee? What do you deal with?
Looking at the accounts, both audited through the Auditor General, and equally those that are internal accounts, basically any financial reports on state corporations. A state corporation is any entity where government has, any entity that can sue or can be sued. And is registered and has, in many cases, its own act of law, and we can be able to actually go through the accounts as well.
So you oversight parastatals?
We oversight parastatals. They're called state corporations, but yeah, parastatals is good enough.
Okay. Those are the ones that have very many scandals, left, right, and center.
Yes, it is true.
And also, we're also talking about...
There are also some that
those that have
actually
been listed as well. Are we talking about those that are listed as well, but the government has taken it?
Kenya Power is one of them.
Yep.
KenGen is another one of them that are listed. We've got the likes of East Africa, Portland, Cement as well.
So, with all of them, today in the papers, we are seeing the meeting that you had yesterday with the Kenya Airports Authority.
Yes.
You'll tell us about that.
Yeah,
we have been asking ourselves for a very long time. So, Shariff Nasir's committee has been sitting and investigating KEMSA and this whole scandal of the KEMSA billionaires, and it's taking forever.
No, actually, it's done.
Is it?
Yeah, we're done. We're done with our report. The only difference is by the time we actually finished adopting that particular report, we're currently on recess. So the first day after recess is over, you will be seeing a report being tabled.
Okay.
For obvious reasons, right now, because of the fact that we've not tabled this report. I cannot start dwelling into details, but the members have already adopted it. It's already been signed. It's actually a document waiting.
So there is
That-
unanimity from the committee on this particular report.
Yes, we do not have a minority report.
Okay.
When you have issues that members are not in agreement with, there's usually what is called a minority report, where someone else can be able to. But in our instance, we had at least a good quorum, acceptable in law and in the standing orders, for us to be able to do a final report.
When you say it's been adopted, what does that mean exactly?
Adopted by members, first of all. There's the adoption by members. That means members have gone through the report, observations, recommendations, then we all sign. And after it's been adopted by members, it now becomes a document no longer belonging to the committee, but it becomes a document belonging to the floor of the House. And now at that moment, that's what democracy is all about, because you elected people to be able to represent you in the National Assembly. So that document then now belongs to the people of Kenya, the people who've been basically donated that political patronage by the people through democratically being elected. And then thereafter is when they debate on that particular document. And it's not just parliamentary report alone. It traverses to more than that. It could be a parliamentary report, it could be a motion, it could be a petition that has been able to come in, it could be a bill that needs to be an act of law. So everything has some level of legal processes. But when it comes to this particular matter, that it is a committee report, it goes onto the floor of the House, it is debated, then thereafter it is voted on. Very rarely do oversight committees have amendments. Very, very rarely. And the reason is because, for obvious reasons, because those who are not in the committee, most of the cases do not know exactly, like they basically would not have been there from the beginning to the end, so they don't know the nitty-gritties. Throughout my time, I've seen it happen only once, where an amendment is done on the floor of the House. But on other instances where you've got bills, where someone can be able to come up with a suggestion, whether it's a government-sponsored bill, it's a private member-sponsored bill, anyone can be able to talk about anything, and you can then be able to amend those particular clauses that you want on the committee of what is called the Committee of the Whole House, where that's where voting is done.
How do you decide what cases that you're going to then look into, or what state corporations you'll have a look at? Some whistleblowing, there's something that's going on, there's chatter. How do you decide?
You see, the thing is, I'll give you an example. You started with the Kenya Airport Authority. My mandate does not just include on looking at matters that are current. It is not an issue of something that is right now. Our mandate is to go through their financial reports from the last time. So I inherited a seat where the Kenya, I'm just giving you an example of KA, where KA had a huge backlog of audited accounts that had not been presented, or had been presented, but the former PIC, of course, and not for any other reason, but because of the workload. So when we start going through them, and you need to start going through something like, let's say for argument's sake, from the year 2010, and whether you like it or not, you have to finish the issues that were raised in 2010. This is why this notion that is always there, I've had instances where, these things will always haunt you. I've had instances where a state corporation, we go through some things, and some of those people who were then head of those state corporations were at Moi's time. So you can imagine the kind of things that they did then. They never expected that these things are actually going to start hitting on them now. So it's not, and then when we're planning what we usually try and do, there are various sectors. We've got the road sector, we've got the energy sector, we've got basically like a human resource sector, which is then things like NSSF. Then you've got the health sector, which is the likes of Kenyatta National Hospital or NHIF, and so you kind of like try and break them out. That we need to finalize in one report. We're going to look into issues to do. There's also going to be energy sector. So whether it's going to be KenGen, it's going to be Kenya Power, it's going to be who, it's going to be who inside there. And then, of course, yes, Kenya Power has been in the news a lot. You'd be surprised that, and I hope Media House can actually be able to highlight on this matter. The Office of the Auditor General, in terms of auditing, has actually probably done a better job than private audit firms. The law allows, actually what the law says is that any state entity has to have the signature of the Auditor General, the substantive of Auditor General. However, the Act governing the Auditor General's office equally allows them to be able to subcontract someone else to try and do the job, because there's some sectors where it's very, very specific. They cannot be able, they need someone who has certain levels of expertise. And I think in our last reports, we did indicate that it might be vital for them not to subcontract.
So to develop internal capacity.
Yeah, you can imagine. I said at a time when I looked at the audit reports for Kenya Power and Lighting, and then because these things were subcontracted, you're getting an audit report that is giving them a clean bill of health, like 100%, that they're totally spotless. And we're seeing now what is happening. And those things were done by private audit firms. They were actually done by private audit firms. It's very easy for someone to ask me, what happened? What did you, And I actually refused. I said, we can't do this. It's impossible. That's why now we even come up now and said that, our mandate, the first mandate actually is to look at their financials, then, if any, an audit report. So we're now reversing it. We're saying, in institutions like this where, you're being given 100% clean bill of health and you can see things are not right, you would rather just go through their internals. That's where actually the other institutions, the DPP and all, if you look at the internals, that's where things actually are being done.
That's where things are cooked.
Yes.
Let's look at all these institutions. For example, now Kenya Power, the Kenya Airports Authority, KEMSA. All of them have issues that are current. And like you're saying, you get into a position where, as a Public Investments Committee, you are catching up with the backlog of previous years.
We do.
In some cases, you're dealing with current plus previous.
Yes.
In some cases, you've got to clear the previous reports as you go into the current.
We actually have to do it simultaneously. We don't have a choice. We have to do it simultaneously. Simultaneously in the sense that if something is going on right now, then it is something that, I'll give you an example. You started by mentioning that you saw me on the issue of the airport authority. The issue, I don't know where you read that, but I don't know.
It's in the Standard today. It's covered in the Standard today. Page, was it 34, CT?
Yes.
Page 35 of the Standard today. Cancellation of JKIA terminal contract haunts the state 5 years on.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, there it is. What this was about was this was done not now. This is not something that was done recently. This was done quite a while back. And what happened, and it's very, very clear in the audit report. It's actually so evident on the audit report. There's what was called the Greenfield Terminal.
Yeah.
And government had decided that part of the issues that are there was that we need to build an airport. So they signed up a contract, gave that contract to the person who won the contract, even did the groundbreaking, paid a down payment and did the groundbreaking as well. In fact, one of the queries that actually came in, as per the audit report, I'm not even saying things that are not public. These are things that are there in black and white. So one of the issues that was there was that they spent 75 million just to ground break. which was not even part and parcel of
What is to groundbreak? The ceremony?
The whole ceremony.
The ribbon cutting
the
ceremony.
ribbon cutting, and and then the auditor says this is in the audit report, the last thing that we saw there was, it was just basically, and now after paying this deposit, the deposit is not in millions.
It's in billions.
It's in billions.
4.2
2
billion.
billion to be
Exactly.
precise.
They paid this money. Then they decided to cancel it. Of course. But these are the issues that we want to look at now.
Yeah.
Why exactly was this cancelled? But then after they decided to cancel it, then these guys came up with a bill of compensation. And they're saying you've got to pay us 17.1 billion. And this, at the same time, this is the same. If this had gone through, it would have been one of the largest investments in this country.
Yeah.
If you had what the MD, who is now a substantive MD, he had been acting for quite a while. But if you heard him, indications are likely that there is need for a larger airport. And he actually said that the reason why this airport is still being able to be sustainable is because COVID dropped the number of visitors. But if the visitors had actually increased this airport, we need another.
So Greenfield was needed.
It was viable.
And it still is.
You see, those are in the words of KA.
Of the KA
I'm not
MD.
a specialist.
According to what the KA is saying,
exactly,
we still need to expand.
We need to
capacity of
expand,
our
and
airports.
I think in his own words, what he's saying is they're not sure whether they're going to use the same company or they're going to relook at how they're going to work into it. And how this came up, this was raised by the Auditor General from a long time ago. And they had not made up a decision. You've already paid. These guys have given you a bill that you have to pay them for compensation because you cancelled, and everything had been on a stalemate for a while. That's why I said, you do things, but then these things will never die. They will always be there. They will ever be there. Whether you like it or not, they're just going to continue being there. And now we are at that stage where they have to make a decision.
You know what I find strange, Mheshimiwa? This committee of yours deals with such things fairly often, I believe. How do you have such a large contract without an exit clause?
In fact, it's not even about that. There are certain contracts that when they're signed, the law is very clear. Any contract that is above 5 billion has to pass through the Attorney General. That's the law. It's the current law, the Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Act. But it's not that the exit clause is not there. The exit clause is there. But there should be predetermined reasons as to why you want to exit. In fact, you can't just wake up and say that today we don't have money.
Yeah.
And then, of course, it depends on the year that this particular contract was signed, whether it was signed with the old act or the current act. The current act is that you have to have 5 billion. Current act is that you cannot sign up on something unless you have the resources, the finance for it already.
You see why I ask? Any basic contract, even if it's an employment contract, there is that clause. These are the terms on which we can part ways. And
if you look at a majority of these contracts, they sign some of these contracts based on international standards.
Yes.
Now, on international standards, when you sign up a contract, international standards as well do not expect you, one, to delay payments. International standards as well do not expect you to either chicken out in the middle or anything else. So we are, forget about just this alone. We are losing so much money on interest. Too much money in this country is being lost on penalties and interest. Your reporter, of course, must have been able to cover this yesterday as well. And as a committee, we have what is called an open door policy, where nothing is actually ever done in camera. Whatever it is that we do is open up. It's first of all, it's law, and secondly, we actually facilitate it. We have a liaison officer who actually facilitates that, let the media be able to come, let people know exactly what is going on. In the event that we've had an instance, I think once or twice, where a witness can actually say, I wish to speak in camera, then in that instance, we request the media to step aside and I listen to what are the actual issues. And out of the 2 times, I think was it 2, out of the 2 times, 1 time I actually ruled that this is not something you should even talk about in private. One of the times that I did rule that yes, this is something that someone can be able, because we were going through a company and the company said, I cannot be able to start disclosing, I'm a private company, if you want me to disclose my financial capacity, whether I had the capacity, you're asking me to
lay myself out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that was a fair request, and we
Yeah.
said that is a fair request. You can be able to do that in private. But even KAA yesterday, if you notice, there was another contract that they've cancelled, and now they've lost about a court case for about 160 arbitration, where they have to
How
pay.
many such cases has your committee dealt with? I'm talking about the period when you've been chairman or are in the process of dealing with. Just the number.
Gosh.
There are that many.
Yeah, there are quite a number of cases that we've been able to.
The reason why I asked the question is because it leads to something that has been discussed in this room and we've discussed with other personalities who've come here, is that how is it that we have a situation where there are always contracts, they are always, and I'm using the word here very deliberately and facetiously, they are always being cancelled and we are always having to pay.
Some of these contracts is not even about cancelling. You see, first of all, they come up with things and say, you know what, in the middle of the way, then we can decide you're doing a variation. That means instead of this project reaching up to here, then you're varying it. It should not reach up to here. It should go into another level, or something else. And some of the times, then there's always a conflict between the board of the state corporation, at the same time the management of that particular state corporation. Like in the instance of that one for the airport, the one that cancelled the buses, that was a decision that was not made by management, it was made
It was
by
a board decision.
a board decision. So we someone needs to be held accountable. So we've asked them, provide us you need to have some form of evidence. You can't just have woken up. I'm assuming that management had the technical expertise and they must have done their evaluation
due
and
diligence,
everything else.
yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then thereafter they send these things to the board and the board approves. First of all, there's also what is called the annual procurement plan. So some of the details that are there, and by the way, the procurement plan, the annual procurement plan, the budget of any state corporation is done by management. Management passes it over to the board. The board approves it. After approving it, it has to go to the line ministry. You see, in the event of KA, it would go to the Ministry of Transport. In the event of Kenyatta National Hospital, it would go to the Ministry of Health. Depending now on the budget and income rotation that they're expecting, then they would now tell them this budget has been approved or this budget has not been approved. The number of state corporations that are actually making money, equally there's also quite a number of state corporations that
are not making money.
forget about not making money. They're quite a burden on
the
taxpayers.
Taxpayers.
State corporations that are making money, you would have expected that Kenya Power would have made money considering they're a monopoly. But they signed into things that, that's why we want to get these internal audits. One of the things that we recently were able to stop was we saw an advert. Somewhere you can flip through and you see an advert that they were trying to advertise for someone to do some form of an audit for them. And we had to quickly remind them that this is no longer something you can give to someone outside. This has to be done by the Auditor General. We had to do that. We've been able to come up with situations where we've been able to save. In fact, we recently did official letter to CS Treasury. Ask, what is the official stand on government when it comes to matters of finalizing these contracts? Because every single time you're coming in, it's just people who are charging, and they're charging the state corporations interest upon interest upon interest. And we've had situations where also in government, one arm doesn't seem to know what the other, arm is doing.
Abdulswamad Shariff Nasir is the chairperson of the National Assembly's Public Investments Committee. We are talking about oversighting state corporations, money going out, some little money coming in, but also we'll have a conversation about, so what happens? There's been a whole report about dealing with state corporations, folding some of them, collapsing some of them, even just doing away with some. What's the status of that, and what does a committee say about that? You were giving, examples of cases that you've dealt with, reports that you've seen of state corporations, and saying some things that were done in the past and you have to deal with them now.
Yeah.
And you are still saying that it is possible for people are doing things thinking that they can get away with it, but they'll catch up with them.
It will.
But we have not seen that. I do not recall, for example, since the 2010 Constitution, a case where I have seen the Public Investments Committee come up with a report, it's adopted by the House, and action is taken where, based on this report, I am seeing cases in court.
I'm only going to give you one example. We, NSSF, we took over this, and we, in the middle of going through the audit and the investigative part of it with their finances and everything, realized a loophole where we actually saved this country 6 billion shillings. Of course, media is a reflection. Media is a reflection of the people. We love to see all that, that the hype and everything else.
I want to see blood on the streets.
No. I've been in media before as well in my previous life. But you will never ever be able to hear some of the things that I have been able to do. We've been able to come up with reports and have declared some people that they cannot and they're not fit to be able to hold public office. Yes, we've been able to come up with reports and have actually declared that some institutions or companies that have been able to do any corrupt dealings should actually be debarred. The question is, after we've been able to do that, that there are always stages. There are always stages. There's stage one. And by the way, this is what the Constitution has given people, that particular mandate, that they can always find a recourse. People, and you know what? I think it's not a curse on the Constitution we have. It's the beauty of the Constitution that no one can ever be able to manipulate any system. So at least I'm glad on the part of saving NSSF, we have been able.
You said what, 6 billion or 60 billion?
6 billion. We saved about 6 billion on.
How?
We went through and realized that, of course, issues that were there, the issues of interest and all that was coming through. And in the middle of it all, we were able to actually realize that there was one thing in that had not been done, and we were able to sort it out and even put it in the report, and we were able to save this country that amount of money.
Meaning you found a clause that enabled you not to pay what had been required of the government to pay.
Yeah, well, it's a document out in public, so let me just tell you what it was actually. Basically, there was a clause in the contract that actually gave, because of lack of payment, because of so many other things. So you get a contractor who's been on site, his crane has been there, his whatever has been there, and then this guy, because he's not getting out, he has to pay his labor. The contract now allows him to be able to put a surcharge. But then now what we did is we said, you know what, put this private consultants aside. Let's deal with public works. Come up and revalue what is it truly that is actually meant to be paid. And when you now look at it and you get into the little nitty-gritties, cut this off, no, this did not happen this way.
Yeah.
You can be able we can be able to save this country money. And that was there. It's in the report, and I'm glad that we were able to do that. One of the other things that we also currently
Did the report recommend any action to be taken against the officers involved?
Yes, we did.
And does it come to be? Because I look at these processes and what's the end goal here?
That's
Is
what I
this
said.
process with a view to uncover what has been happening, or with an end goal of to make sure that it doesn't happen again, whereby you set precedent by taking action against individuals who've done the wrong thing and stop this from happening in the future?
You see, the thing is, we whether we like it or not, that's our constitutional dispensation that we have. There's everyone's role. ESCC's role is to actually not only just investigate, but also prosecute. They can actually take someone and take them, recommend to the DPP that we need to prosecute so and so. The executive's role as well is to now look at these matters, like if we come up and tell them that, a number of these state corporations don't have title deeds. They don't have title deeds.
Yeah.
You'd be surprised. Don't get shocked. There are a number of these
That
state corporations.
ADC does not have title deed for the lands.
Exactly. They do not have title deeds for their own properties. So it becomes very, very easy, and they become vulnerable for that property to be grabbed.
Yeah.
Even today, as we're speaking, a number of these state corporations. So if someone from the ministry decides not to take any action, then what needs to happen is, first of all, head of public service needs to say, you know what, there was a report that was done. There are things that can be done, and under our domain, we can be able to do it. But the Constitution says that Parliament will be able to recommend this.
Yeah.
But then there's the other arms of government that have to
Which should
implement.
execute
We
and
don't.
implement.
We're not in the executive. The ESCC needs to ensure that these matters are taken further. The executive needs to say, you know what, look at these people, and if this person, so far there's a recommendation that they should not hold public office, then at least let us not
Get them appointed.
get
into
them
any office.
appointed. If they're going to fight their way out and they want to be elected, and they get a court order to allow them that, they can be elected for whatever reason, and I respect the judiciary. The judiciary probably would give them that reason. That is now beyond the hands of the executive. But at
Yeah.
least within the domain of the executive, let it be known that, there was beyond reasonable doubt. This and this happened. This is a recommendation that was given. If this man has taken this matter to court, then at least until the case is settled, let us not give him an appointment.
Yep.
Not yet, at least,
Yeah.
And can you encourage this process? Because it would appear as though, look, I mean, it is painstaking work. I mean,
It is.
relentless sitting, hearing over and over and over again. Is there some kind of push beyond a recommendation, for example, that the committee would be able to give, and an insistence on the same, that can we have this looked at beyond a recommendation? Because I have a feeling, that those who sit and watch this entire process playing out know that beyond a recommendation, that's just about the size of it.
Well, like I said, there's what the executive needs to do, and then there's what we are doing in Parliament. One of the things that can be able to be pushed, you see, there's some things that do not even necessarily have to go through Parliament. Appointments in boards. You get board appointments all the time. The president appoints so and so and so and so in a board. By law, that person does not even come to
be vetted by
Parliament. But yes, Parliament can be able to say that, you know what, there's a report recommending so and so. And there's some things also, it's just an issue of, I would believe it's just an issue of ethics.
I also think
It's an issue of
Mheshimiwa,
ethics, and I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
The chair of KEMSA right now is the chair of the
Is the chair.
Communication Authority.
Yep.
So it's at least you should have let everything be finalized before you appoint someone.
I wanted to say,
elsewhere.
Mheshimiwa, I think that as Parliament, you have powers and tools that you can use to make sure that the executive does what Parliament has said you should do. And in fact, the Speaker of the National Assembly was very quick to remind the Chief Justice of this just the other day.
I
where
think
he
first
said,
of all,
okay, you know, you are complaining about the summonses being issued against your officers. Dare not come. We have other ways of making sure that you feel the impact of not honoring summonses by the National Assembly. Why can't you expand that and say, if we've come up with a report and the report recommends this action be taken, if that action is not taken, we also have tools. We can deny you budget.
exactly.
Why don't we see that
But
happening?
you see, I'll tell you one thing, and this is the reason why I'm not going to get into that debate, the whole debate of BBI. This is one of the major reasons why I strongly believe that CSs should be presented in the national. It should be there in the National Assembly. Right now, what we have is committee chairs. It's very easy. If you're going to have a CS, for argument's sake, you recommend someone. I'm not saying that that is what has happened. Someone in the transport industry should not be there. It's very easy for you to tackle a cabinet secretary who's inside the house and ask them that question, that, you know what, this and this recommendation was adopted by this house on this date. What action are you taking on this individual? But needless to say, then, you know, right now what we have is committee chairs. So these chairs, basically their role is a conduit between the ministry. But whether we like it or not, that's the way the current...
Are you saying that that's not effective? That, for
not.
example, chairman of the PIC can write to the CS
Actually,
in
no.
energy and say, there's a
three
recommendation that we've made.
the
Something should happen.
three oversight committees, we don't even forget about dealing with them on day to day. It's also ethically wrong if, for argument's sake, I wanted to go and in check up on Kenya Ports Authority. It's even ethically wrong for KPA to facilitate my travel.
Yep.
You know, I would have to ensure that if I want to go and check something at the Kenya Ports Authority, it's in Mombasa, then my travel would have to be facilitated by
Parliament.
by Parliament, because our role is that of an investigative nature. So we don't even per se do that. Once we've been able to come up with a recommendation, then when it comes to issues to do with implementation, there's a whole committee on implementation that actually their role is that. And they're doing that right now. There's a committee on implementation that has been able to do some things regarding matters to do with land. They're doing some other issues. And these recommendations are recommendations that had been done by the Public Investment Committee, by the Public Accounts Committee. So their role is the committee on implementation, that these things need to be done. Of course, because of either laxity or either as well lack of certain laws that are yet to be done. Or I'll give you another example that, you know, like today I have done it before. It's not that we've not done it. We've recommended companies to be debarred from doing business. I've done it. You know, that these people did so and so, and but then now the public, the authority in charge of public procurement, the PPRA, also have certain guidelines, and those guidelines are yet to be implemented. So until those are done,
In fact, the question that was going to be asked, Mheshimiwa, is, yes, you take a stand, yes, you issue an edict, but how often are these actually followed?
But I'll tell you one thing. Look at what EACC has been able to do and the DPP. And like I said, some of these things are not heavily followed as such. the NYS issues.
Yeah.
I was reading in the papers the other day where the Asset Recovery Authority has been able to recover some amounts of money from that matter. At that time, people felt that it was never going to happen, but it did happen. Eventually, it does happen.
Yeah.
Maybe, and I think, you know, corruption has hit this country to a level where 30% of our expenses can be attributed to corruption. That's a very, very large figure.
That's a billion.
Exactly. 30% of a trillion, yes.
Yeah, trillion, yes.
Is attributed to corruption.
And this is where then, Mheshimiwa, the Parliament gets in the spotlight. Because as all these things happen, one is left to wonder, is this all a very well orchestrated scheme? So, for instance, there are recommendations. Parliamentary watchdog committees such as yourselves will, summon people, will be barking loudly, will be showing their teeth, and then they'll write a report, and then that report sometimes has some good recommendations, sometimes does not have recommendations that are far-reaching. But let's talk about the ones that are far-reaching. Far-reaching recommendations of this auction need to happen. And then it goes to implementation, it doesn't happen. But there's a committee of the National Assembly that has the power
to be able to follow up on the implementation.
And then now you hear again later, okay, we cannot implement this because, there was supposed to be a regulations that should have come through the Committee on Delegated Legislation to be adopted by the Parliament so that we can then...
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Is this not a very well coordinated orchestra just being played out to make sure that, yes, we shall talk? On record, we are fighting corruption, but practically, we all know what we are doing.
No, I'll tell you what. It's easy to be able to read it in that manner. But when some of these things were being done, I was not even a member of Parliament. I wasn't even, whatever we were going on through on KA. I think I was just a few months in Parliament. I was still a very, very young parliamentarian. These things had not... no one even knew I was going to be the chair of...
speck of grey.
Exactly. No one even knew that I was going to be the chair of the Public Investments Committee. But you also have to remember that the level of reports that the Implementation Committee is currently going through is pretty large. But does not mean that they've not been able to follow up on these matters. They do follow up on these matters. They have actually been following up on a number of these issues. And then also, about 2 days ago, we had a roundtable meeting where the DPP was there, EACC boss was there, I was there, the PAC chair was there, Treasury team was there, the people from the Auditor General herself was there. And we were just... The reason why we actually had that is because we're saying, look, we've done all this that needs to be done. Something has to be actioned, Yeah. And they gave their inputs as well, that some of these... in fact, during my time, the first thing that I did when I became PIC chair is actually I held a meeting. We held a retreat on how we're going to be able to work together between myself, the Office of the DPP, Office of the Auditor General, together with EACC as well, officials. And we discussed quite a number of issues. And then now what we're trying to say is, after we've come up with these reports, the best thing that can be able to happen is get them implemented. Failure for which it becomes a problem. It's easy to say that, but implementation committee, how come they're not following up on this matter? But it's easier to say the people have already been told to do it. Why are they not doing it? Exactly, if you say that Parliament's role is just to come up with reports, would be a bit wanting such kind of a statement. But we've done our part. We have truly done our part. We have gone beyond to say that, this and this is what needs to be done. We have seen this, we have seen this. EACC, the DCI, anyone else is at liberty and free to be able to add on to whatever it is. Yeah. Even the people, the Constitution grants them the right. The people who are mentioned in the report, they can be, and that's why I'm ever extremely... If you look at whatever it is that we have been doing, I always say that, are you sure? Is there anything that you want to add on? In my committee, if the system, for argument's sake, because it's a very sensitive system, so if power goes off and goes back again, then it reboots, because it is something that is the intercom system for recording. I actually make sure that no one says a statement until the system is on, so that at any given time, no one can be able to say, I never say this.
Yeah.
You're on record. You are on record.
You're the one who said this.
Yeah, people have been able to try and take matters to court. People have been able to use judiciary as a shield, and it's their constitutional right. It is their right. But at the same time, you can't get away by saying that I was not given an opportunity to be heard. That's why everyone has to be there. And again, it's easy to say that you guys are just doing this because of the media and everything. But it's also easier for me to do meetings as well and not involve the media.
Sure.
But that's not how I operate. I would prefer operating in a way that
Transparency.
everyone can be able to come. If the media houses today, you can ask your parliamentary reporter, from the one who did this story to the people who cover KTN as well, that if they need any document, and that document has been tabled before that committee, it automatically becomes a public document, unless the person who tabled that document specifically requests that we would prefer these documents not to be in public domain yet until you finalize on whatever it is that you're doing. And we've had such situations.
Okay. There are several reports that we're expecting from you. One is this one on KEMSA, and you've said your committee has finished its job.
Yeah, we have. We've done our part.
Waiting for the next stage. We are hoping, and this is my personal hope, that this one is not going to be like the other report that we saw in the Senate.
No, it's going to be
on
different.
MES, which was, had a lot of findings, but then the recommendations were...
My recommendations will be based on, I'm not going to start dwelling onto matters, because it is still, as long as it is not yet on the floor of the House, it's still a document that
fully
is
understood.
But I can tell you, just what I can simply say is that it's going to be different from the other reports.
And we hope that the actual beneficiaries of the KEMSA billions are going to be exposed. That's what we've been talking about here. You see, CT and I have been wanting to work with KEMSA, but we haven't, and that's how come we didn't end up.
We were told that if you pass by KEMSA on Wednesdays and Thursdays, you can actually get a contract. And we have people who've been passing by KEMSA for the last couple of months.
And we've paid them so much money because they're working.
And so far, no one has gotten a contract. And we're wondering, surely, at what time? Maybe we're passing at the wrong time.
Let's wait for the report. Maybe the report will give us some leakage. This is how you do.
No, but even when it comes to issues to do with for any good reporter, issues to do with whoever was a beneficiary of that business, any good, decent reporter, and as long as you're following up on a committee, by now they would have already built up. Because we've never hidden anything.
Yeah.
Everything has just been laid bare. And even in the report, part of the annexures as well will include, this is everything is there. Who am I to hide?
Okay.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.